Welcome, dearly beloved chosen ones. When you live so clean that even an investigation turns into a testimony service, you know heaven has you covered and your enemies are in serious trouble. They thought they were launching a takedown, but what they actually did was open the gates of your promotion. Let's begin with something most people don't realize. Over 65% of character attacks are driven by hidden envy, not actual misconduct. And in your case, chosen one, they were so convinced there had to be dirt on you, they sent someone to dig. But what happened next? The shovel snapped in half. They were ready. Oh, they were so sure this was the moment they'd finally see you exposed. They had their little group chats, their silent smirks, their stories rehearsed. The popcorn was popped, the fake tears were on standby. The screenshot folder was open. They expected a scandal, but they walked straight into a wall of integrity. Because when that investigator, spiritual or natural, did what they were sent to do and started asking real questions to real people who actually knew you, guess what they found? Not skeletons, not scandal, not chaos, but receipts, order, peace, evidence of discipline. People saying things like, actually they've always been respectful, never in the drama, focused, reliable, rare energy. Imagine their faces when they realized the truth wasn't just protecting you, it was praising you. They sent someone to destroy your name and ended up upgrading your reputation. That's what happens when you're chosen, not just by people, but by God Himself. Before we go deeper into how this entire spiritual surveillance operation completely backfired and lit their whole plan on fire, I want to take a sacred moment to say this. To every single person who has supported this channel through super thanks, thank you. Your generosity helps keep these prophetic truths flowing. Whether you sowed a gift or simply showed up and listened, I see you, I honor you, and I deeply appreciate your presence. You are part of this movement, and whether you give or not, your engagement is valued more than you know. Now, if you know this message is for you, if you feel your spirit waking up right now, drop 7 in the comments as a sign of divine completion and spiritual confirmation. That's heaven's number for alignment, clarity, and elevation. When you type that number, you're not just commenting, you're coming into agreement with everything that's about to be revealed. Because, chosen one, what you're about to hear is not just gossip reversal. This is divine evidence. This is what happens when your life is so clean. Your silence speaks louder than their accusations, and the only thing their investigation exposes is your anointing. So buckle up, grab your journal. This isn't drama, this is divine documentation. And for those who tried to sabotage you, they tried to assassinate your character and ended up accidentally testifying on your behalf. Let's break it all the way down. God's chosen ones. Investigator asked about you. They got mad, it was all good gossip. Number 1. They were praying for dirt, but you were so free. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered what happens when people go searching for flaws in someone who's actually been living right? What do they do when their whole plan to sabotage you depends on a scandal that doesn't exist? What happens when their secret whispers can't compete with your public and private consistency? Let me tell you what happened. They were praying for dirt, not praying for you, praying against you. They hoped they'd dig up something ugly, anything, a crack in your character, a slip-up from your past, a skeleton in your closet. But what they didn't count on was your freedom. You see, when you're not hiding anything, you're unstoppable. They launched an entire mission disguised as concern or due diligence, hoping to expose something damaging. But behind that mask of curiosity was jealousy. Jealousy disguised as justice. They went looking for something to weaponize. They thought maybe someone out there had dirt on you, a shady decision, a reckless relationship, a secret contradiction between your words and your walk. But chosen one, you didn't just survive storms, you kept your hands clean through the rain. You didn't just talk purity, you walked it, even when nobody was watching. And here's the twist. The people they approached were supposed to be part of their takedown. That's what made it so delicious to them. They believed those folks would spill your secrets, add fuel to the fire, and help build a case against you. But the exact opposite happened. Why? Because your life had already done the talking. You've shown up with integrity in places where you had nothing to gain. You've been the same behind closed doors as you are in public. You didn't just post quotes about grace. You practiced it in silence when people were difficult to love. Isn't that powerful? Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what kind of impact have I really made when no one was looking? Because that's what came to light. People didn't need to defend you with fluff. They spoke with conviction because they saw the consistency. They couldn't co-sign lies about you because your actions over time had become your strongest witness. This kind of truth is what infuriates your enemies. Not because they were caught lying, but because they had nothing real to use. They were counting on your downfall. They bet everything on the assumption that your image was too good to be true. But when they looked deeper, all they found was roots. Deep roots, solid soil. Not dirt, just the ground you grew from. Psalm 37:6 says, "He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun." That's what happened to you. The very light they tried to put out became the evidence of your divine alignment. Take the story of Denzel Washington, for instance. Many tried to discredit his faith by poking at his past or questioning his motives. But over decades, Denzel has maintained consistency in how he speaks, lives, and carries the presence of God even in a secular industry. He didn't need to defend himself. His fruit did the talking. So did yours. Have you ever noticed how silence can sometimes be more powerful than a defense? That's exactly what made them uncomfortable. You didn't try to scrub your image before they investigated. You didn't panic because you were already living right. The good gossip wasn't staged. It was simply the overflow of a righteous walk. Even Proverbs 10:9 affirms this. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. And guess what? You walked securely. The ones trying to frame you were the ones exposed instead. You know what else drove them mad? They expected someone, anyone, to have something negative to say. But no one did. Not because you're perfect, but because you're authentic. And when authenticity shows up, it cancels out manufactured drama. Just like Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers himself. There were skeptics who didn't believe someone could be that kind and consistent. Journalists went digging. Biographers followed him. But what they discovered shocked them. He really was that gentle, loving, and truthful. No scandal, no secret darkness, just real light. Your life is no different. They hoped to find contradictions, but instead they found confirmation of your calling. The investigator expected whispers of misconduct, but instead heard echoes of honor. That kind of report shuts down lies instantly. And that's what made them unravel. They weren't just disappointed, they were devastated. Because if you weren't hiding anything, then their plan had no power. They had been clinging to a fantasy that only worked if you were fake. But when the truth entered the room, their fiction melted. And the truth wasn't just verbal, it was spiritual. Isaiah 54:17 promises, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment, you shall condemn." They tried to use words as weapons, but those weapons backfired. Because your record was clean, your heart was pure, and your legacy was undeniable. Just like Malala Yousafzai, who was attacked for speaking out as a young girl, her critics tried to tear her down with false narratives. But her life, her peace, her unwavering message of education and equality silenced them all. She didn't have to fight back. Her story stood strong. Now here's the final question. Are you ready to keep walking with that kind of clarity, even when they're watching? Because your enemies aren't just mad that you were innocent. They're mad that you were unstoppable. And that's what chosen ones are. Untouchable by lies, because truth lives inside them. Number 2. The street spoke louder than their secrets. Chosen one. Have you ever realized that your influence travels further than your footsteps? That even when you don't speak, your integrity leaves echoes in rooms you've never entered? Because here's what just happened. The very streets they thought would echo their lies are the same streets that testified on your behalf. They thought they had it all figured out. Start a rumor in secret, let it spread like smoke, and eventually the crowd will believe it's fire. But they forgot one thing. You've been planting seeds of truth while they were planting weeds of deception. They assumed that your silence meant weakness, that your humility meant you had something to hide. But in reality, you've been making quiet, powerful moves in places they never even thought to look. Isn't it funny how the people watching from a distance often end up becoming your strongest defenders? Let's ask a deeper question. What happens when your everyday impact becomes your greatest weapon of defense? That's exactly what unfolded. The investigator, neutral, unbiased, unaware, started asking around. And the streets? They didn't echo slander, they exposed truth, real truth. The kind that doesn't need to be dramatized, defended, or dressed up. The kind that stands on its own. Proverbs 11:3 says, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity." You, chosen one, have been guided by integrity even when no one gave you credit for it. And now, that integrity is doing the talking. It's speaking louder than their secrets ever could. They underestimated the subtle legacy you were building in people's hearts. You weren't just nice, you were present. You listened, you honored, you carried yourself with grace even in tense situations. You didn't have to brag about it, you simply were it. And when someone started poking around to see if the rumors were true, they hit a wall. Because the streets, the real people who've watched you walk even from afar, weren't interested in lies, they remembered the truth. Chadwick Boseman is a perfect example of this. While battling a private battle with cancer, he continued to give everything to his work, never making his pain a performance. People didn't know the whole story while he was alive, but after he passed, the streets, the actors, fans, directors, and even hospital workers began telling stories of his humility, his presence, his kindness. He never had to defend himself. His life spoke, just like yours. And that's what shattered their illusion. The people who started the lies didn't expect pushback. They expected silence, or worse, agreement. They assumed others would quietly nod, add fuel to the fire, or share their concerns behind your back. But instead, the people you impacted, some of whom barely even know you personally, refused to co-sign the nonsense. That's what enraged your enemies. Have you ever thought about the quiet witnesses in your life? The people who've watched you handle pressure with calm, who've seen you refuse to gossip when it would have been easy, who've watched you forgive when it hurt. That's the testimony they weren't ready for. They thought gossip would go viral, but grace went further. Matthew 5:16 declares, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." That's exactly what happened. Your light broke through their shadow games. You didn't have to shout. Your consistency was the shout. Consider Keanu Reeves, often underestimated, often mocked for his simplicity. Yet time and time again, strangers have come forward sharing how Keanu paid their way, helped them silently, treated everyone from janitors to producers with the same dignity. When tabloids tried to drag him into drama, people pushed back. Why? Because the streets had receipts. Quiet kindness leaves loud legacies. That's why their story crumbled. Not because someone gave a fiery defense, but because dozens of small testimonies stacked up. Honest impressions, consistent energy, people saying, "No, I've watched them, they're not like that." And when truth comes from multiple unrelated directions, it's unstoppable. You've probably asked yourself at times, does anybody really see what I do when no one's watching? The answer is yes, and more importantly, those silent witnesses remembered when it mattered most. Your authenticity created echoes, and those echoes became your shield. Now let's talk about Ruth in the Bible. She wasn't famous, she didn't have a grand title, but her faithfulness, her quiet devotion to Naomi, and her commitment to integrity earned her a reputation that went before her. When Boaz asked about her, the entire community already knew she was real. You're walking the same path. You didn't do it to be seen, but heaven made sure it would be revealed. Romans 2:7 tells us, "To those who by persistence in doing good seek glory, honor, and immortality, he will give eternal life." You persisted in doing good, and now honor is chasing you, even while lies try to run you down. They wanted you to be buried under slander, but instead your name started blooming in places they didn't plant. The streets didn't just defend you, they celebrated you, and that's what sent the gossipers into emotional chaos. because they can't compete with real. They can't erase the good gossip, the truth about you, that lives in the hearts of those you've touched. Just like Princess Diana, loved by the public, not because of titles, but because of her genuine compassion. When critics and royal insiders tried to slander her, the people didn't join in. Why? Because they felt her sincerity. That's the same vibration your life gives off. You don't have to ask people to take your side. Your truth naturally draws loyalty. And now the question stands. Are you ready for more eyes to be open to who you truly are? Because the truth is out. The streets are speaking, and what they're saying about you. It's not gossip, it's glory. Even Ecclesiastes 7:1 says, "A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth." You have a good name, chosen one, and that fragrance is overpowering the stench of slander. The people they hoped would turn against you have become your unexpected choir, singing praise, not because you asked, but because truth always finds its own volume. So stand tall. You didn't need to manipulate, defend, or explain. You just had to remain real. And now their secrets look small beside your streets. Number 3. Even the quiet witnesses had nothing ugly to say. Chosen one. What does it say about your life when even those who kept their distance still can't speak badly about you? What happens when the people who never really liked you still find themselves admitting the truth in your favor? That's not image, that's integrity. You see, some people were waiting for your silence to speak for you in the worst way. They assumed your quiet demeanor was covering up something dark. They thought that if they just asked enough people, especially the ones who weren't necessarily close to you, they'd find something scandalous, something messy, something they could finally use to validate their jealousy. But what they didn't account for was this. Even the quiet witnesses, the co-worker who never smiled at you, the distant classmate who never really clicked with your energy, the old friend who faded out of your life without drama, had nothing bad to say. And that's what really wrecked the ones trying to ruin your name. Because when people who don't even like you won't lie on you, that means you've been living a rare kind of truth. Proverbs 22:1 reminds us, "A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold." Chosen one, your name has weight, not because you fought for it, but because you walked for it. And that kind of reputation cannot be faked or fabricated. It is earned, brick by brick, in silence and in solitude. Think of Anthony Bourdain. He traveled the world, met thousands of people across cultures, and rarely did anyone, friend or stranger, have something negative to say about his character. Even those who disagreed with his style respected his sincerity. That's how rare genuine consistency is in a world full of facades. The people investigating your character thought they were going to find whispers of rebellion. They thought they'd uncover some secret pattern of recklessness hiding just beneath your composed surface. So they turned to the shadows, to the folks who never laughed with you, never texted you, never supported you. They believed that in those corners they'd find confirmation of their suspicions. But all they got was stillness. The most they could dig up was, "We didn't talk much, but they were respectful," or "They minded their business, didn't cause drama," and even that was too clean to weaponize. That kind of unshakable energy. That's not performance. That's purity of purpose. Titus 2:7-8 says, "In everything set them an example by doing what is good, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us." Chosen one, the people who never vibed with you still couldn't deny the honor you carried. Your truth stood so strong, even neutrality bowed in your favor. Just like Greta Thunberg, a young climate activist who has faced immense criticism. Yet when skeptics tried to paint her as radical or unstable, what did the world see? A teenager consistent in message, firm in discipline, and unwavering in mission. Even critics had to admit she was real. So what do they do now? They're angry, not because you lied or retaliated, but because you didn't need to. You let your daily discipline do the talking. And when the investigator reached out, the silence of slander was louder than they expected. They thought they had backup. They thought there would be echoes, but instead, all they heard was respect in unexpected voices. Even Ecclesiastes 7:5 says, It is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. But no wise person could rebuke you, because you've been wise, even when you were ignored, even when you were underestimated. And now, that quiet consistency is exposing every false accusation. Frida Kahlo lived a life full of personal struggle and yet maintained artistic and moral authenticity. Many didn't understand her, some disliked her, but few could ever question her realness or integrity. Like you, even the ones who stood at a distance knew they couldn't twist her truth. Have you asked yourself this lately? Who's watching me right now that I don't even notice? And what will they say when it matters? Because what they said in your moment of test ended up being the confirmation of your spiritual success. Your life is the sermon they never expected to preach. And your silence, that was your strategy. You never had to fight back. The absence of mess in your life spoke louder than the presence of lies in theirs. Number 4, their rage isn't about the report. It's about the mirror. Chosen one, have you noticed how some people's anger toward you has nothing to do with what you did, but everything to do with what your life reflects back at them? You weren't just investigated. You became a mirror, and what they saw staring back at them, that's what broke them. They thought this little background check was going to finally expose you. They thought if someone just dug deep enough, they'd find the version of you they invented, the fake, the fraud, the arrogant person they whispered about behind closed doors. But instead, the truth turned the spotlight, and it landed right on them. The investigation didn't reveal darkness in you, it exposed the darkness in them, and that's when their rage hit a different level. Because now it wasn't just about you being cleared, it was about them being seen. John 3:20-24-21 says, "Everyone who does evil hates the light, but whoever lives by the truth comes into the light." Your light didn't just survive the attack, it revealed the attackers. And that kind of divine exposure, it's humiliating for anyone still hiding from themselves. Let's talk about Michelle Obama. Throughout her time in the White House, critics tried relentlessly to tarnish her image. Yet every slander campaign only highlighted their own prejudice, bitterness, or fear. Her grace, her strength, her intelligence, it mirrored everything they refused to become. The same is true for you. Your walk, your poise, your refusal to clap back, it all became a glowing contrast to their pettiness. Every good word spoken about you reminded them of what they chose not to become. You stayed calm under pressure. You stayed clean under scrutiny. You stayed kind when you had every reason to be bitter. James 3:13 says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility." That's the part that's crushing them. Your deeds weren't performative, they were humble. And now the mirror is held up, and they can't look away. Remember Robin Williams? Behind the comedy was a deeply generous soul. Many in Hollywood tried to box him in as merely an entertainer. But after his passing, stories flooded out of scholarships he quietly funded, children's hospitals he supported, acts of kindness done with no audience. He didn't boast, he simply was. And those who mocked him, the light exposed their shadows. Chosen one, you weren't the one who cracked under investigation. They did, because every clean detail about you shouted something painful to them. You're still pretending, but this one's the real deal. 2 Corinthians 8:21 tells us, "For we are taking pains to do what is right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but also in the eyes of man." You've done just that, and in doing so, you've shined a light they couldn't dim. They expected a report. What they got was a reflection, and mirrors don't lie. Even actor Brendan Fraser, who was blackballed after speaking out about abuse, has made a powerful return, not by fighting dirty, but by walking in humility and truth. And now, he's celebrated. His attackers exposed. So let me ask you, are you ready for your clean truth to keep irritating their dirty conscience? Because it's happening. The more you elevate, the more mirrors you hold up, and the angrier they get, the more obvious it becomes. It was never about you, it was about their reflection all along. And now, beloved, the truth has spoken, the mirror has cracked wide open, And you're still standing clean. Number 5. They didn't just lose control, they lost the narrative. Chosen one, what's more powerful than defeating your enemies in battle? Watching their carefully constructed narrative crumble under the weight of your quiet truth. This was never about fists or confrontation. This was psychological warfare, social sabotage. They weren't coming for your body, they were coming for your name. Because in their minds, if they could control how others perceived you, they could control your reality. Have you ever noticed how some people fight with whispers instead of words? That's what they did. They didn't argue with you in public. They whispered half-truths in secret. They sprinkled just enough speculation to make others squint at you. They interpreted your peace as pride, your silence as guilt, your stillness as a smirk. They fabricated storms and blamed you for the thunder. It wasn't about what happened, it was about what they could make people believe happened. But here's what they didn't see coming. When someone finally decided to check the source, to investigate the actual truth, the entire illusion collapsed. Isn't it amazing how quickly darkness shrinks when real light enters the room? Luke 8:17 says, "For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open." And chosen one, that's exactly what happened. The people they never thought would speak up, co-workers, quiet friends, even casual acquaintances, all began to share a different narrative, one grounded in reality, one rooted in the peace and consistency they had personally witnessed in you. Take the story of Oprah Winfrey. For years, critics whispered that she was manipulating audiences or being fake in her emotional storytelling. But those who worked closest to her, camera operators, interns, makeup artists, shared the same message: she was real, kind, consistent. That kind of testimony overrides gossip every time. When your character is affirmed by people who don't owe you anything, the power shifts, lies lose their legs, and that's exactly what happened to your enemies. They thought they had the upper hand, but they didn't just lose control of the story, they lost the whole script. Because the people listening stopped asking, what did they say about the chosen one, and started asking, why did they try so hard to make this person look bad in the first place? Isn't that the turning point? When people begin to question not the target, but the intent behind the attack. That's when doubt becomes devastating for the deceiver, because lies thrive in unchecked space. But the moment a light flickers on, when someone brave says, wait, I've never seen them act like that, everything unravels. Proverbs 18:17 says, the first to plead his case seems right, until another comes and examines him. And that's what happened. The people you thought weren't even watching, they were, and when asked, they told the truth. Your enemies didn't expect that kind of cross-examination. They weren't ready for witnesses to rise up out of nowhere. Think of Taylor Swift during the height of her public fallout with Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. The media tried to frame her. The narrative was that she was manipulative and fake. But slowly, truth began to surface. Former collaborators and friends started to speak. Not defensively, but with gentle consistency. She's not like that. And the false narrative crumbled, publicly. Now people are side-eyeing the very ones who tried to assassinate your character. They're replaying every lie and asking, why did I believe this in the first place? And in that awakening, your enemy's power evaporates. Because it was never rooted in fact, it was rooted in illusion, and now the illusion is gone. Isaiah 54:15 tells us, if anyone does attack you, it will not be my doing. Whoever attacks you will surrender to you. Your attackers didn't just fail, they surrendered, unknowingly, by exposing their own desperation. The more they tried to define you, the more they revealed themselves. Think of Brendan Fraser once more. Blacklisted, defamed, cast out, but he never slandered back. He let time and truth do what rage never could. And now, redemption, glory, return. You didn't have to swing back. You let the story fall apart on its own. And when truth broke through the script, it didn't just damage the lie, it collapsed it. You didn't just survive the sabotage, you outlived the illusion. Number 6. You've been living so authentically, even strangers could vouch. Chosen one. What happens when your reputation precedes you, not through a marketing plan, but through consistent integrity? What does it mean when even strangers, people who've only caught a glimpse of you, still speak well of you without prompting or persuasion? You didn't craft a persona. You didn't try to impress anyone. You just lived. You walked in quiet dignity. You treated janitors the same as executives. You said thank you when no one expected it. You moved with grace even when no spotlight was on you. And that quiet daily authenticity left a trail, a spiritual fingerprint that strangers now recognize. Philippians 2:15 says, "Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people." Chosen one, you've been shining this whole time and didn't even know it. That's why when the investigator came around, he didn't find mixed reviews. He found consistency. Think of Fred Rogers again. Mr. Rogers never pretended to be kind. He simply was. Even after his death, stories emerged from strangers, flight attendants, gas station clerks, fans, saying, "He treated me with such warmth." That's the level of impact you've been having, chosen one. The people trying to frame you were hoping anyone would say, "Oh, they've got a temper," or "They're always in the middle of something." But what they found instead were quiet echoes of peace. Your energy left a message without you needing to explain it. 1 Thessalonians 4:11-12 reminds us, "Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders." That's what you've done. Your life has won respect, not through volume but through vibration. You didn't broadcast your values, you embodied them. Even actor Keanu Reeves lives this way. Known for his kindness, simplicity and integrity, stories of his generosity have come not from PR campaigns but from strangers. He gave up his seat. He helped me pick up my spilled groceries. Real ones don't shout, they shine. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, how many people feel better just because they crossed paths with me once? That's your legacy. That's your impact. Even those who saw you for mere seconds recognized something solid in you and said so. Your enemies can't fight that. They can't destroy a reputation they didn't build. And that's what's driving them mad. They were hoping to exploit inconsistency, but instead they found a flawless frequency. Psalm 15:2-3 says, "The one whose walk is blameless, who speaks the truth from their heart, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to a neighbor." That's how you've lived. Not perfect, but blameless. And that kind of character can't be challenged by noise. Just like Nelson Mandela, who after decades in prison emerged not bitter but whole. Even guards testified to his patience, humility and strength. People who barely knew him still remembered his presence. His energy, like yours, left an imprint that couldn't be faked. While others were busy trying to build a lie, you were busy building a legacy. And that legacy is now speaking. You don't need headlines. You have history. You don't need backup. You have witnesses, even the unexpected kind. And now the question echoes. How do you destroy someone who never needed to defend themselves in the first place? Answer, you don't. Because that person you isn't built on perception. You're built on truth. Number 7. They used to smirk at your solitude until it protected you. Chosen one. Have you ever been mocked for simply minding your business? Have you noticed how people laugh at quiet strength until it outlasts their chaos? They mistook your solitude for weakness. They called you cold, said you were distant, labeled you antisocial. But what they never saw coming is that your stillness was your strategy. While they formed messy alliances rooted in gossip and insecurity, you were building something they couldn't see, a life of divine protection. Why weren't you at every event? Why didn't you chase every circle? Why didn't you join every conversation? It wasn't arrogance, it was discernment. They couldn't tell the difference between isolation and wisdom, but you knew. You weren't separating out of fear, you were separating out of focus. Proverbs 27:12 says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." You saw the danger long before the drama exploded. You knew that not all company is good company, that not all community is sacred, and so while they laughed at your distance, you were preserving your peace. They had no idea your silence was the loudest strategy heaven was using. Think of Albert Einstein, A man often seen walking alone, dining alone, reflecting in solitude. The world mocked his appearance, his reclusive lifestyle, his odd habits. But while others were partying, Einstein was unraveling the laws of the universe. Alone doesn't mean absent, it means aligned. That was you. That is you. When the investigation came, they expected to find you tied to the mess, linked to the backroom talks, attached to the drama. But you weren't there. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. And that's what stunned them, because they thought silence was weakness. But it turned out to be your greatest weapon. Have you ever asked yourself, what was God protecting me from when I chose to walk alone? That question answers itself in hindsight. While they were bonding over betrayal, you were building in sacred solitude. And now that scrutiny has come, they're scrambling to clean up while you remain untouched. Psalm 91 Pierce, though. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. In Him will I trust. Chosen one, your solitude wasn't just emotional space, it was spiritual shelter. You weren't hiding from people, you were hidden by God. Look at Maya Angelou, who chose introspection and truth-telling over popularity. Her voice grew stronger in the stillness. When others were shouting for attention, she was choosing reflection. Her power came from solitude, and her words still echo because of it. So now the same people who laughed at your distance are realizing that distance made you untouchable. You weren't included in the lies because you weren't included in the loop. You weren't looped into the mess because you never bowed to manipulation. They said you were antisocial, but now that antisocial energy is being called what it really was, discernment. Isaiah 30:15 reminds us, in quietness and trust is your strength. And look at you, strong, steady, unmoved while they scramble. They tried to drag your name through the mud, but the mud never reached you because you never played in their puddles to begin with. Just like Dave Chappelle, who walked away from a multi-million-dollar deal with Comedy Central. People called him crazy, arrogant, paranoid. But years later the world understood. His separation was strategy. He didn't lose his mind, he preserved his soul. Your enemies didn't understand that when God isolates His chosen, He's not punishing them, He's positioning them. And now when the chaos breaks loose, you are standing clean. You weren't just silent, you were sovereign. You weren't detached, you were divinely deployed. James 1:4 says, "Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Your solitude did that work. It finished what community could never polish. And now they finally see what looked like loneliness was God's leadership in disguise. They laughed back then, but no one's laughing now. Number 8. The good gossip was a bulletproof vest in a spiritual war. Chosen one, have you ever considered that your integrity was building armor around you long before you knew you'd need it? Every time you chose kindness over chaos, silence over slander, humility over attention, you weren't just doing the right thing. You were preparing for war, a spiritual war, and your life was forming a bulletproof vest made of truth. They were hoping their lies would land like arrows. They were preparing a takedown, whispering doubts into ears, hoping to bend perception and fracture your name. But something disrupted their plan: the good gossip. What's good gossip? It's the unsolicited truth that people share when no one's looking. It's the compliments behind your back, the quiet respect in the room after you've left, the consistent way people say they've always been solid. Proverbs 10:9 says, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely." Chosen one, you've been walking in that integrity for so long, you didn't even realize it was becoming your shield. People remembered how you moved in meetings, how you handled rumors, how you kept peace when others provoked you. Look at Steve Irwin, the beloved wildlife conservationist. He never marketed his goodness, it radiated from him. And even long after his death, people from all walks of life continue to share kind stories about him. That's the power of good gossip. It covers you, even when you're no longer present. When the investigator came looking for faults, they didn't find ammunition. They found testimonies. They're respectful. They don't start drama. They helped me when they didn't have to, one after another. Voices of truth rose up without you lifting a finger. Have you ever wondered how many people are unknowingly speaking your name with honor today? How many strangers, co-workers, cashiers, old classmates are silently standing guard over your reputation because of the seeds you planted? Matthew 5:14 through 16 says, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Your light isn't just shining, it's shielding you. Think of Princess Diana. Again, even those who barely interacted with her spoke of her grace and kindness. She didn't have to fight to preserve her name. Her actions did the fighting for her. So do yours. Your enemies didn't know that every small decision to hold your tongue, to speak with honor, to stay grounded, was preparing a courtroom they couldn't win in. They thought they could assassinate your image, but they walked straight into a trial where you already had witnesses, dozens of them, and none of them had been coached. They were just telling the truth. Isaiah 54:17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you." Those words weren't just spiritual, they were prophetic. You lived in such truth that even malicious tongues had nothing effective to say. Look at Bob Ross, the painter. So calm, so quiet. But behind that voice was someone deeply respected. The world tried to find dirt on him. None. Even people from business deals and production crews had nothing bad to say. His calm wasn't just a persona, it was armor. Chosen one, your life testified before you ever needed it to. That's why the attacks bounced off. That's why the bullets of slander didn't pierce. You weren't pretending, you were prepared. Romans 2:7 says, "To those who by persistence in doing good seek glory, honor and immortality, he will give eternal life." You persisted in doing good, even when no one was watching, even when it hurt, even when it was easier to clap back. And now, you are covered. Not by fake loyalty, not by strategic allies, but by divine credibility that even your enemies can't deny. So the final question is this: are you ready to walk confidently, knowing your legacy already speaks louder than their lies? Because the verdict is in. The good gossip won the war. You didn't just survive, you prevailed. Number 9. Your boring life was their worst nightmare. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why they were so desperate to label you as dull, plain, or forgettable? Why they snickered at your routine, your quiet presence, your lack of drama? It wasn't because you were lacking anything. It was because your discipline made them uncomfortable. They couldn't manipulate you. They couldn't bait you into emotional chaos. And so they called you boring to distract themselves from how threatening your peace actually was. You weren't everywhere trying to be seen. You weren't jumping into gossip circles, stirring up conflict, or chasing attention. You were living slow, intentional, steady. And because they couldn't figure you out, because you didn't explode, react, or fall into their traps, they told themselves a lie, that you were irrelevant. But what happens when the fire comes and only one house is still standing? What happens when the storms arrive and the only person not panicking is the one who planned for this? That's what's happening now. The very thing they mocked, your stillness, your consistency, your so-called boring life, has become the strongest evidence against every attack they launched. 1 Thessalonians 4:11 says, "Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your hands." That's exactly what you did. You stayed grounded. You kept your business clean, and now when scrutiny rises, you're standing solid because you've been solid. Take Barack Obama, for instance. Critics said he was too composed, too reserved, too boring to be presidential material. But when character, steadiness, and calm were needed in chaotic times, his boring became his brilliance. He didn't react to everything. He responded with strategy, just like you. They didn't want you to be stable. They wanted you to be reckless. They were hoping for receipts, scandals, skeletons. But instead they found peace. They went digging for drama and discovered boundaries. They found someone who had been living intentionally, not impulsively. That's when they started to panic. Chosen one. Have you noticed how threatening calm becomes to someone who's addicted to chaos? How silence drives unstable people crazy because they can't read it, can't control it, can't twist it. They mistook your lack of mess for lack of depth. but you were never shallow, you were rooted. Proverbs 10:17 says, "Whoever heeds discipline shows the way to life, and your discipline has become your shield." You didn't have to scrub your past or explain your every move. There was nothing there for them to twist. No reckless behavior, no bad deals, no loose ends. Think about Rosa Parks, a quiet seamstress, not a loud activist, but it was her quiet defiance, her refusal to move, that shook the system. Her boring life became the spark of a revolution. Sometimes peace is the loudest protest. Sometimes silence is the loudest sermon. They underestimated how dangerous your self-control really was. While they were playing games and building narratives, you were building character. And now the investigation shows that clearly, no scandal, no contradiction, just a track record of someone who's been intentional, focused, and at peace. Ecclesiastes 9:17 says, "The quiet words of the wise are more to be heeded than the shouts of a ruler of fools." You didn't need to shout your worth, you lived it. And that's what's haunting them, because their entire plan was built on the assumption that you had a reckless past to exploit. But your so-called boring life gave them nothing to work with, and that kind of nothing is terrifying to people who feed on mess. Look at Tom Hanks, often labeled predictable or safe. Yet in every interview, every film set, every interaction, the same words come up: respectful, grounded, generous. That kind of legacy speaks louder than charisma. It lasts, it protects. You didn't outfight them, you outlasted them. You didn't react, you remained. And now, the boring life they mocked has become the very reason they can't touch you. The peace they ridiculed has become your protection. Your restraint wasn't weakness, it was warfare, and it won. Number 10. They wanted the investigator to confirm the lie. He confirmed the light. Chosen one, what happens when the trap they built for your character becomes the spotlight for your glory? They were never seeking truth. They were seeking confirmation. Confirmation for a lie they whispered so long that even they started to believe it. They had already created an image of you in their minds, manipulative, two-faced, unstable. They didn't want to uncover facts. They wanted vindication for their bitterness. They thought the investigation would be the nail in your coffin. They believed they'd finally see the fall they fantasized about. But what they didn't understand was that this was never just a human inquiry. This was a spiritual audit. And what they walked into wasn't a courtroom. It was a moment of divine exposure. Job 23:10 says, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." You were tested, scrutinized, watched, but what they uncovered wasn't weakness. It was light, not just absence of guilt, but presence of grace, consistency, and strength. Think of Serena Williams. So many tried to discredit her legacy, investigations, biased headlines, but the more they looked, the more her discipline, sacrifice, and strength came to light, and in the end, her name outshined every rumor, just like yours is doing now. The investigator was supposed to find shadows. Instead, they found clarity. They found stories of how you endured insult without insult, of how you kept calm under pressure, of how you didn't retaliate, even when you had every reason to. That's what wrecked your enemies. Because the final report didn't just say innocent, it said set apart. Psalm 37:6 says, "He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun." That's what they couldn't stop. Not just your protection, but your unveiling. They wanted you exposed, and you were, but not how they planned. You were exposed as someone who's been held by God, someone who's walked in truth even when no one clapped. That report didn't just clear your name, it judged theirs. Because in the process of trying to tarnish your image, they exposed their intention, and that's what's haunting them now. Have you ever realized, chosen one, that sometimes God uses your enemy's own trap as the platform for your promotion? That's what happened here. The people they thought would ruin you ended up confirming your righteousness. Romans 8:31 reminds us, if God is for us, who can be against us? The verdict didn't just say not guilty, it screamed divinely covered. It didn't just defend your name, it dismantled theirs. And now their smear campaign is turning into a mirror of their own darkness. Think about Brie Larson, an actress targeted for being too outspoken. They tried to twist her every word. But when the truth came forward, how she used her platform for justice, equity and kindness, the very attacks built her platform stronger. What was meant to destroy her revealed her light. And you weren't just cleared, you were confirmed. The investigation didn't damage you, it elevated you. It validated what heaven already knew. You're chosen, you're covered, you're clean. Isaiah 54:14 says, "In righteousness you will be established, terror will be far removed, it will not come near you." And now the ones who tried to terrorize your name are watching, powerless as truth shines through every lie they built. You didn't need anyone to lie for you. You didn't need to argue, plead or perform. You simply remained, and that stillness, anchored in heaven, became your greatest defense. So here's the final question. Chosen one, are you ready for the next level of your unveiling? Because the case is closed, the truth has won, and the light has spoken. Number 11. They underestimated how deep your roots go. Chosen one, have you ever been mistaken for someone weak simply because you didn't shout your strength? Have people ever misread your peace as passivity? That's exactly what they did. They saw your calmness and assumed it meant you had no backing. They looked at your quiet demeanor and decided you were harmless, unremarkable, even irrelevant. But they couldn't have been more wrong, because what they couldn't see is that you weren't standing on surface-level popularity. You were standing on roots, deep ones. You weren't built on applause. You were built on respect. See, it's easy for people to gossip about someone who's only liked, because likable can be fleeting. But respect holds weight. Respect makes people pause. It puts a line in the sand, even among enemies, and that's what they never anticipated. They thought if they stirred the pot, people would join in. They were sure that if they gave just a little push, the crowd would turn on you. But when they started whispering your name in shady corners, they were met with silence, or worse, resistance. Proverbs 10:9 says, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out." You've been walking in integrity for so long that even those who didn't like you respected your path, and that respect became your shield. Think of Nelson Mandela. Even among his fiercest political opponents, there were many who still respected his composure, his discipline, his unwavering dignity. His strength wasn't in volume, it was in consistency. And like him, your consistency forced even your critics to hesitate. Have you ever noticed how even people who don't rock with you still won't let others slander your name? Why is that? Because they know deep down that your walk has been solid. You never had to force people to support you. You never needed to chase followers or force alliances. You simply lived in a way that demanded quiet reverence. Ecclesiastes 7:1 reminds us, "A good name is better than fine perfume," and chosen one, your name has become a fragrance of quiet honor. That's why, when they tried to attach lies to it, the soil rejected it. Your roots, your discipline, your choices, your restraint created an environment where falsehoods couldn't take root. Look at Angela Bassett, a powerhouse of dignity in the entertainment world. Even those who haven't worked with her directly speak of her grace, her excellence, her consistency. Her name carries weight. Yours does too. Your enemies were sure they could gather enough side eyes and subtle shade to ruin you. But what they ran into was an unseen firewall. Respect earned in private. Even distant acquaintances couldn't co-sign a lie. They didn't have to like you to acknowledge your strength. Psalm 112:6-7 says, "Surely the righteous will never be shaken. They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord." That's the power of your roots. You didn't fear the whisper campaign because you had already sown seeds in seasons where nobody clapped. Think of LeBron James, often criticized, endlessly watched, yet never caught in scandal. Even his critics acknowledge his discipline, his fatherhood, his loyalty. They may not cheer for him, but they can't deny his roots run deep. So now, when the storm came, people remembered. They remembered your grace under fire. They remembered how you never dragged others, even when you had the chance. They remembered how you stayed in your lane, and that collective memory became your courtroom defense. They expected to see you unravel. Instead, they watched the community, silent, unspoken, and strong, rise around you like a protective barrier. Because respect has a longer memory than popularity, and you weren't just liked, you were honored. Isaiah 33:15-16 says, "He who walks righteously and speaks with sincerity, his refuge will be the mountain fortress." You didn't need a rebuttal. Your roots were your fortress. And now they realize you weren't standing on applause. You were standing on something sacred. Number 12. They turned a character check into a courtroom, but you had the receipt. Chosen one. Have you ever lived so truthfully that your life became its own defense? That's exactly what happened here. They didn't want the truth. They wanted confirmation for the lie, so they turned what should have been a casual background check into a full-blown investigation. But instead of uncovering chaos, they opened a courtroom, and every moment of your discipline walked in as evidence. They thought they were about to break you down, but what they didn't know was that you had already submitted the proof through your actions. Every time you chose to remain calm in the face of hostility, that was a receipt. Every moment you helped others without expecting credit, another receipt. Every time you chose boundaries over bitterness, that became your testimony. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Chosen one, your harvest has arrived. Your goodness is reaping vindication. You never posted screenshots. You never aired out your frustrations. You just stayed consistent. And that quiet consistency built a legal case in the spirit realm, one that no enemy could win. Think of Michelle Yeoh. She spent decades working, choosing excellence over attention. When people finally tried to question her legitimacy, the industry, her co-stars, crew members and fans rose up with decades of receipts, excellence, grace, professionalism, and now she's crowned with honor. Your enemies didn't realize they weren't just asking questions, they were triggering a spiritual trial, and when the evidence came in, it wasn't petty drama, it was character. The people who spoke of you weren't rehearsing, they were remembering. 1 Peter 2:12 says, "Live such good lives among the pagans that they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us." Your life had receipts so consistent that even the people who didn't know you well knew better than to lie. Look at Brandon Sanderson, the prolific author often mocked for being too clean, too quiet, too boring. But behind the scenes, readers, editors, event coordinators all spoke up. He's kind, he's generous, he delivers what he promises. That reputation became his armor. You didn't need to show up to the courtroom, your patterns did. And when the jury of public opinion looked at the case, what did they see? Not a messy past, not erratic behavior. They saw structure, stability, repetition, and that's what shook your enemies, because they thought they could catch you slipping, but instead they tripped over your discipline. Proverbs 4:25-26 says, "Let your eyes look straight ahead, give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways." You walk that verse out, and your steps have now become a testimony. Think of Zendaya, graceful, composed, wise beyond her years. Her haters thought her silence was inexperience. But when the spotlight came, her history spoke. Consistent professionalism, kindness, maturity. The world saw her not as an image, but as evidence. And you didn't win this war by showing up to every battle. You won by showing up to your purpose. That's why they lost control. The courtroom they created backfired, and the gavel came down, not just on their lies, but in favor of your truth. Psalm 26:1 says, "Vindicate me, Lord, for I have led a blameless life. I have trusted in the Lord and have not faltered." Chosen one, your blameless life spoke louder than anything they could fabricate. So the final question stands. Are you ready to keep living in such a way that your life stays ahead of every accusation? Because the trial may be over, but your testimony is only beginning. Number 13. Now they're panicking because their plan relied on your silence. Chosen one, do you know why they're shaking now? It's not because you exposed them with loud accusations. It's not because you dragged their name or plotted revenge. No, the panic has nothing to do with what you said and everything to do with what you didn't. Because the truth is, their entire plan, their whole manipulative strategy was built on one faulty assumption that you would stay silent forever. They mistook your restraint for helplessness. They assumed your stillness was submission. What they didn't understand was that your silence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You weren't avoiding confrontation because you had no voice. You were avoiding it because you didn't need to waste your energy proving a truth that would reveal itself in due time. Proverbs 17:27-28 says, "The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent." And chosen one, your silence wasn't absence, it was strategy. While they were busy stirring drama, you were quietly letting your life build the case. They wanted you to lash out. They expected you to crumble under pressure, explode with frustration, or respond emotionally so they could spin your reaction into evidence against you. But when you gave them nothing, no response, no retaliation, no meltdown, they were left with their lies hanging in the air with no place to land. Look at Greta Thunberg. So many tried to mock her, silence her, discredit her. She didn't scream back. She didn't fight dirty. She kept her message sharp, simple, and focused. The world listened not because she was loud, but because she was unshakable. So are you. And now, they're unraveling. Not because you exposed them, but because they exposed themselves trying to destroy you. When the investigation concluded, when people actually started asking real questions, and the truth started to surface, what shocked everyone wasn't what you said, it was the fact that you said nothing. Ecclesiastes 3:7 reminds us, there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. Your silence was divinely timed, because what they didn't calculate was how many people were already watching, how many were quietly observing your peace, your composure, your refusal to engage. They underestimated how memorable calmness can be in a stormy world. Take Fred Rogers, for example. He never raised his voice. He didn't play dirty. But when critics came for his kindness, millions defended him, not because he fought back, but because his life already stood tall, just like yours. Now they're backtracking, rewriting stories, dodging accountability. Why? Because truth once revealed can't be put back in the box. The lie they nurtured began to suffocate under the weight of your character. Your silence became the mirror that reflected their schemes, and now the world sees it. Psalm 37:5-6 declares, "Commit your way to the Lord. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn." You didn't defend yourself. You let the light defend you. And when truth shines, shadows scatter. They laughed at your silence. But now, that same silence has turned into a thunderous verdict. They once mocked you for not clapping back, but now they're exposed without you ever lifting a word. Look at Aung San Suu Kyi, who spent years in silence during political imprisonment. Her silence wasn't defeat, it was resistance, and that silence became the rallying cry for an entire nation. Your silence too has become a sword. So let this truth settle in your soul. You never needed to speak to be heard. You didn't need noise to prove innocence. Your life did what your lips never had to, and now the world sees it. Your silence was never your weakness. It was your strongest move. Number 14. You became the plot twist they never saw coming. Chosen one. Have you ever felt written off before your story even had a chance to begin? Have people ever assigned you a role you never auditioned for, just because you didn't fit their comfort zone? That's exactly what they did. They cast you as the villain, the problem, the one to watch out for, not because of what you did, but because of who you were becoming. They mistook your confidence for arrogance, your boundaries for attitude, your solitude for secrecy, and so they wrote a script in the shadows, portraying you as the chaos, hoping everyone would believe it if it was whispered long enough. But life, and especially divine destiny, doesn't follow the script of the jealous. The plot they created was predictable, but what they never saw coming was you. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? You weren't the villain. You were the new thing, the interruption, the divine plot twist. Not by fighting back, but by simply continuing to be you. When the investigation began and people started being asked real questions, their storyline unraveled. They expected everyone to nod in agreement. But instead, people told the truth. Not sensationalized drama, just quiet, consistent truth. They've always been calm. They don't get involved in mess. They mind their business. And just like that, the plot flipped. Think of Simone Biles. After years of being labeled as just an athlete, she stepped away from competition to prioritize mental health. That decision made her the plot twist. People expected silence, but they got strength. Expected retreat, but witnessed revival. Your presence is that powerful. You didn't chase revenge. You didn't force vindication. Yet somehow, justice caught up anyway. That investigator, that wasn't just a routine check. That was a divine intervention, a pause in the chaos, a spiritual audit from heaven to stop the lie before it metastasized. Job 5:12 says, "He thwarts the plans of the crafty so that their hands achieve no success." God himself disrupted their scheme. You didn't beg for clarity. Heaven ordained it. You were never meant to be destroyed by their fantasy. You were always meant to be unveiled through their failure. Look at Colin Kaepernick. They painted him as a villain. They wrote a script to bury him. But now, years later, people are seeing the truth. The real story was never about rebellion. It was about revelation, just like yours. They were so sure they could reduce you to a rumor, but chosen one, you are not reducible. They were confident the audience would accept their narrative, but the moment the truth walked into the room, their whispers were drowned out by facts. The story didn't go the way they wrote it, because they forgot one thing: this is your story. Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him." Even their sabotage was repurposed. Even their lies served your unveiling. They thought they were running the show, but in reality, they were a subplot in your testimony. Think of Viola Davis, whose quiet rise to power stunned critics. She was overlooked, typecast, and underestimated, but her raw talent and unwavering presence flipped the entire narrative. Now she's not just respected, she's legendary. And you? You didn't just survive their rewrite, you outlived it. Your discipline, your stillness, your refusal to conform, all of it revealed the truth. When the spotlight came, there was no scandal, there was only substance. Psalm 75:7 says, "It is God who judges. He brings one down, he exalts another." And now he's exalting you, not just publicly, but righteously. The lie didn't last. The illusion didn't hold. You were the twist in their tired script, the one they never saw coming. So let this be etched into your identity. You are not a rumor. You are a revelation. You didn't win by exposing them. You won by existing in truth. They tried to bury you in fiction, but heaven had already authored the finale. And spoiler alert, you rise. Beloved, if this message stirred something deep inside you, if it mirrored back the truth you've been carrying in silence, then don't just keep it in your heart. Activate it. This wasn't just another video on your screen. This was divine confirmation, hand-delivered from the throne room of heaven to your soul. So if your spirit said, "This was for me," I want to invite you, no, I want to welcome you into alignment. Subscribe right now so you never miss another word that's meant to sharpen your discernment, strengthen your walk, and remind you exactly who you are. You are not average. You are not forgotten. You are not broken. You are chosen. And this space is your confirmation zone. Drop a comment below. Let me know how this word hit you, because your story, your voice, your agreement, it adds power to this moment. And if you felt seen, heard, or divinely understood, go ahead and like the video so this truth reaches others just like you. Share this with someone who's been misunderstood, underestimated, or quietly enduring a smear campaign their character is already defeating. Send this to that one friend who's been doubting their light because of someone else's narrative. Remind them, you don't need to prove yourself when your life is already doing the talking. And if this ministry, this message, or this movement is speaking life into you, consider sewing into it through the Super Thanks button below. Whether it's $1, a prayer, or simply your continued presence, know this: we are grateful for you, deeply. Whether you give or not, your energy here is valued, your attention is a gift, your spirit is felt. This isn't just content, it's confirmation. This isn't just commentary, it's prophetic clarity. This isn't just a video, it's vindication wrapped in truth. You didn't find this by accident. You were led here by divine design. And now that you're here, stay. If you know you're walking in purpose, if you know you're in your pruning season, if you know you've been chosen for something greater, then this is the place built for you. This is more than a channel. This is your spiritual mirror, your kingdom circle, your prophetic checkpoint. Welcome home, chosen one. Until next time, stay grounded in grace, stay glowing in truth, stay chosen in everything you do. And may God bless you with discernment that protects you, favor that surrounds you, and peace that nothing in this world can shake. In the mighty name of Jesus, Amen.